panel this afternoon. This panel is going to be for lift, cargo, and fixed wing. We've got the Army Capabilities Manager as well as the PMs for each of those categories. And what we're going to do by starting off is I've asked each of the principals seated up here for the panel if they would introduce themselves and kind of give you a wave top level of the things that they're working on and the things that are important to them. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dave Morgan, the ACM-Lift from Fort Rucker, or Fort Novosel.
Thank you, sir. Colonel Dave Morgan, just like General Golden said, I'm the Army Capability Manager for Lift. There may be some of you out there that are unsure what that was or what that is, because I can tell you I was. So if you're an Office Space fan, I'll tell you, we talk to the customers so the engineers don't have to. Right? So if you sort of think about that, that encapsulates what the ACMs do. So I've been on the job for a little over 9 months. Our portfolio, my specific portfolio, is for the UH-60s, the UH-72, the CH-47, and then the fixed-wing aircraft as well. So whenever I came on board, like I said, about 9 months ago last summer, one of the first things that I did was to try and outline for my team what I was looking for this first year. And it really was twofold. So what I asked them to do was to develop a capabilities integration priority list. So a SIPL, an old school SIPL. If you were here for the last briefing, you heard Colonel Woody talking about that one-to-end list, something very similar to that, but with a slight twist that I'll talk about. So that's one thing that I asked them to do. And then the second thing that I asked was to let's go back and let's relook all the requirements documents for all of our airframes that are in our portfolio. Huge undertaking, and I can tell you it was unsolicited. No one asked for that. The reason why I did it is because I want to make sure that if and when we're asked, we have something ready and we can outline what that's going to be. So I think with that, that's probably all I'll have for this opening session.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Colonel Calvin Lane. I'm the project manager of utility helicopters. We manage all variants of the UH-60 Blackhawk. That's the Alpha, Lima, the Mike, and the Victor, as well as the UH-72 Lakota. Been in the job about 4 years. Primary responsibility is production, fielding, and an array of other duties, primarily meeting the needs of our warfighter with the UH-60 and the Lakota fleet. Most recently, we awarded our 10th and final, or was projected to be our 10th and final multi-year contract. It's for a base of 120 aircraft with 135 options to primarily cater to our FMS customer base. As far as 60, we've fielded about 1,130 aircraft to date. For the 60 Victor, I think about 44 aircraft, 42 of which we have fielded. We started out fielding for the 60 Victor National Guard Compo 2 units, and we're finally transitioning in the June timeframe to finally fielding our first active duty unit, which is 12 Cab over in Germany. So excited to be here today. I look forward to taking your questions, and I'll transition over to my good buddy here, Lieutenant Colonel Hickey from the Cargo.
Hello, good afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Hickey. I'm the Block 2 Product Manager. On behalf of Colonel Al Nowles, Product Manager of PM Cargo, appreciate the invite and thanks for inviting us up to speak about cargo capability. So within PM Cargo, we have 3 product offices, of course, that are responsible for delivering heavy lift capability to the warfighter as well as our strategic partners and allies. Within the Block 1 office, we're continuing to refine and update that aircraft as it will be in the fleet for the next 40 plus years. We have our FMS Cargo International, currently filled in 8 countries. And we have the Block 2, which I'm responsible for, and modernizing that airframe and getting it to the field. I'll turn it over.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. It'll be a little bit of a repeat for those of you who were there yesterday for our PEO aviation panel, but I've been in the job for 9 months here, and we manage all the airplanes in the Army, so about 250 fixed-wing aircraft, 27 different MDSs. And I like to say there are more MDSs and airplanes in the Army than helicopters in the Army, so that's a unique piece of our mission. But we manage the SEMA fleet, which is the electronic warfare aircraft and sensing aircraft. Big transition going on there from turboprops to jets. I think we may see some questions on that later. And then also we manage the CLS fleet, CLS maintenance for all the airplanes in the Army because they fall under CLS, contractor lifecycle support and logistics support. And then finally, we also do FMS. So anyone that wants to buy an airplane, usually in the Americas for counter-drug or any other purpose, can work through our office. And I said that finally, but also one more, high-altitude platforms. We are in charge of that in our office as well. So the high-altitude stratospheric solar aircraft, as well as the balloons. So I spent 20 couple years in the Army and end up as PM balloon, which is not a bad place to be. So I'm enjoying it very much and look forward to taking your questions as we move forward.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. David Phillips, I'm the PM for the Future Long-Range Assault Aircraft. So it's been a busy year for us, and I'd like to just give you a couple quick updates, but really the biggest things that we've have behind us now are the Joint Multi-Role Technology Demonstrators. We finished up the flight test on those last year and the last 2 years. A lot of flight test data that went into shaping requirements early in the program. And then from that, we executed in the last 2.5 years a competitive demonstration and risk reduction. And that effort was also instrumental in laying the foundation for our requirements and then moving out with some of the preliminary design efforts. At the same time, we initiated the source selection for the actual weapon system development contract, and we executed that over about the past 18 months. So in parallel, those 3 efforts were ongoing. We just did the down select on that contract, if you didn't know, back in the 5th of December. And then just to rehash a little bit of what happened after that, we went through the GAO protest period, had a little discussion there with the GAO, which was obviously a chance for us to provide information back to them. And then just in the past 3 weeks, they levied their decision. So if you haven't read that, probably worth that 38 pages of online reading. That'll kind of talk to some of the things that occurred in source selection. I won't be able to talk too much about those in much more detail than what was in that paper, but I just want to lead with that up front. And then looking into the future for us, we've got about a year's worth of great work ahead of us, looking toward a milestone B next year and really laying the foundation with a preliminary design review, a integrated baseline review, a full-on SRR and SFR, system functional and system requirements review to really close on that preliminary design, which is super important and critical as we get through this first phase of the contract. As we close on that, then we'll look at the future options on the contract and really go into it in a rigorous manner, deliberate, aggressive, but rigorous. And so I'll pause there and look forward to y'all's questions.
All right, let's begin the first question to Colonel Morgan, again, the ACM-Lift. Colonel Morgan, you've been the ACM-Lift director for about 9 months now. How are you approaching the enduring fleet's targeted modernization requirements?
Thanks, sir. So I think it's probably prudent to start out with the fact that we're fully committed to the FVL, maintaining that effort, the things that David's doing down there, namely with FLRAA and things like that. So that's obviously our top priority. But behind that, we are looking at targeted modernization for our enduring fleet. And some of the things that we'll be looking at there are safety and obsolescence issues to make sure that those aircraft remain ready and able to execute their mission for the foreseeable future. Beyond that, I sort of mentioned earlier in my introduction, part of the reason why we did this SIPL is that I wanted to reach out in our role as the user representative to get a feel for what's out there, what we're looking for, so then we can inform Army aviation leadership on where we think those capabilities need to be. So a slight adjustment from the way we did it in the previous year from my predecessor is that I wanted to try and get, at least for the ACM side of the house, to try and get away from a solutions-based discussion. So what I charged our team with doing is going out to the community of users, and that's a broad community. I won't go so far as to say the aviators are overrepresented, but we definitely get that voice being there at Fort Novosel. So we made a concerted effort to reach out to all the folks in the ground force that we actually exist for. So we made it out to all the other centers of excellence, to the capability managers like me within those centers of excellence, and started to pull together what it was that they were looking for and what they needed from a lift perspective, without trying to presuppose any sort of solution. So we pulled that information in, sort of came up with that initial draft of that SIPL, that one-to-end listing of capabilities And then we aligned those against last year's Army Aviation Equipment Modernization Strategy to try and bend them out in the, at least in those broad terms. And we took that list and then we shared it out with the folks here on my left to give them an idea of what we were hearing from the field for those capability needs, to then allow them, the acquisition folks, to look through and see what solutions might be possible. So we'll take that list, and then again, what I hope to do with it, with the team here, is inform the Army senior leaders, the Aviation six-pack at the next Home on Home, which we expect to be somewhere around the summer, and then come away with a list that we can carry forward to try and actually inform that targeted modernization that I mentioned.
Good, thanks for that. Colonel Lane, can you talk to us a little bit about the future of the UH-60 Blackhawk once FLRAA comes online?
With respect to the UH-60, I mean, it will continue to be in the fleet for a very long time, and we're projecting around 2070 that aircraft will remain in service, doing all the great things it does for our warfighters today: air assault, air movement of troops and equipment, medevac. All those missions will remain relevant in the utility fleet for time to come. It's been a great performing aircraft. 2006, when the 60 Mike first came online, and nothing but great things and great advancements and capability and technology has been the cornerstone on the program. So because of that great success, we continue to invest in it, and because of that great record, we're looking at targeted modernization, as Colonel Morgan alluded to. And some of those areas that we're looking to improve is the integrated area navigation. That'll come online probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks. It's supposed to have been out a couple of weeks. We're slightly delayed with that program, but it wasn't because of performance. It's because the Army has a very long and rigorous documentation process. So now that is behind us. So we'll be looking to start fielding that probably within the next, as I said, 4 to 6 weeks. Another area we're looking to improve is the advanced turbine engine that's going to come online. We have 2 aircraft currently sitting in West Palm Beach. When that capability arrives to us, those aircraft are instrumented and ready to begin the integration process, as well as flight testing. So we're excited about that. It's going to be great advancements in power, reliability, as well as fuel efficiency, and that's going to be key in the next battlefield. So we're excited about that. We have a great team of professionals, engineers, and logisticians working to maintain that aircraft. And finally, I think the other area is MOSA. I mean, we're working hard to make sure that a fleet of our size, over 2,135 aircraft, right? We have to figure out a way to maintain the relevancy of that platform. And so we're working that. I mean, if you had to imagine that we had to buy a black box for every aircraft, right? And that can be very costly. So what we're working to do right now is to work from a card system to make sure that we can include slots, card slots, to make sure that we can continue to provide capability to our warfighter, along with other things. Reuse of technology, reuse of the current systems, that's going to be key to us on the next battle. And the speed of integration is also a big part of that. And so as we move to the next thing, with a platform that's going to be with us over, until 2070, it's key that we continue to put mitigation processes in place to make sure that we can answer the call of our aviators and maintainers when we need to. So, thank you, sir.
Colonel Hickey, can you talk to us about the status of the CH-47F Block 2 program?
Yes, sir. So progress, right? So we finally completed our grounded test plan. We flew over 800 plus hours with our 3 EMD aircraft to test flight and handling capabilities. We got the report back, looks well, nothing surprising there. We should be nearing the completion of engineering, manufacturing, development here in end of FY 23, as well as system qualification. As of recently, we've procured lots 1 and 2 via the NDAA congressional ads for 6 aircraft. We have a NDAA FY 23 congressional ad that will be negotiated contract here at the end of FY 23 as well. All indications are good. During developmental testing, we had a couple of favorable results that were very surprising due to the fact that we removed the ACRB and put back on the legacy FRBs. Now that we moved on from DT, we will shift our focus over to operational assessments beyond FY23.
Thank you. Colonel Miner, the High Accuracy Detection and Exploitation System, HADES program, can you tell us how it's doing? Is it still on track for a fiscal year 24 program initiation and contract award?
Thanks for the question, sir. Yeah, Hades is doing great. We're looking good throughout the POM and the FIDEP funding-wise, and so that now leaves it up to us to do the hard work to deliver. We had a draft RFP released last week, a confidential RFP to the people that responded. We had a great industry day 2 days ago on Tuesday here in Opryland. I think we had 16 different folks that came through. Was able to talk to everyone from industry that had any desire to talk to us. We're definitely in the free and open competition. The more people that can provide solutions to us, the better. We really want to get that feedback on the draft RFP. Actual RFP should be released later this summer. We're targeting for an award next summer in 2024 to a lead system integrator to incorporate all those sensors from our partners at IEWS with the government digital backbone into a medium altitude, long endurance platform that's capable of flying 45,000 feet for 10 plus hours and really get after some of that deep sensing that the Secretary and the Chief are so keen on getting. So we're on track, we're looking good, we're excited to move into the contracting phase and then hopefully start cutting some metal next year and really get into the technology development part that's a lot of fun. So appreciate that question.
Colonel Morgan, talk to us about the latest and what's going on with respect to the LUH-72 Lakota.
Okay, thanks, sir. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, so I'll start sort of close to home there at Fort Novosel. So I think we've got our full complement of aircraft there. If not, maybe there's one more still coming, but very close to completion there. And I think that's really a testament to Cal and his team, making sure that went over without any issues. So beyond that, of course, those are all the alpha models. And beyond that, we've got the CTCs that still have their complement of 72 alphas. And then the National Guard, of course, who has just about as many as we've got there at Fort Novosel, I think with just under 200. In addition to those alpha models, the National Guard is already starting to get, I believe at the last count, correct me if I'm wrong here, it was 16 of the 18 Bravos, which really have an increased performance for them. And some of it is specific to capability requirements that the National Guard were looking for, particularly in the areas of high, hot, and heavy. So I think we're looking really good. And like I said, I think it's a true testament to what the UHPO folks did.
Colonel Lane, can you talk to us a little bit about UH-60 Victor?
UH-60 Victor is a great first step for the Army aviation community for modular open systems architecture. So in an era where Army aviation is beginning to embrace rapid technology insertion and the goodness that that brings to the modern battlefield, it has definitely kicked down the door and is performing very well. So to date, we fielded about 42 UH-60 Victors, primarily to the National Guard, and as I stated previously, the first active component unit will begin receiving theirs probably this June and July timeframe. So it's been a long road to get to where we are today. So we're very excited about the capability that it brings. I haven't come across a unit, knock on wood, that doesn't enjoy the capability that it brings to the field. So it's a joint venture between the Army and, well, the Army in general. We're the integrators. And Corpus Christi Army Depot, they produce a great product. We're all familiar with the process. I think I've given the kind of the lay down several times. We take advantage or we leverage UH-60 Lima recap program. We rip out the wiring harness and we put a brand new one in and put a brand new cockpit. So we turn those analog gauges to a digital cockpit on par with the 60 mic. So it's a part of our modernization strategy overall in the aviation community, and we're glad to have it out there and performing well. So we're in our second full rate, low rate initial production, and we continue to bring those aircraft down the production line at CCAD. So, thanks, sir.
Thanks. Colonel Hickey, how does PM Cargo cultivate a better equipped, capable, and interoperable Chinook fleet with our allies and partners?
Yes, sir. Thanks for that question. So we maintain a high degree of commonality with our foreign partners and allies in the realm of avionics as well as our aviation safety equipment. So therefore, when we redesign things and do CAS upgrades, we take a concerted effort to not come up with U.S.-only solutions, right? So anything that disadvantages our partners or creates obstacles for fighting in the MDO fight together, we eliminate that and ensure that our partners are on the same realm as us. And one of the things we do that best with is with radios. We try to do less radio integration through CAS and do soft patches outside of the system software, so that way we can allow our partners and allies to stay in pace with us. Thanks.
Good. Colonel Miner, can you talk to us a little bit about what COCO ISR is, and if the Army's still planning to contract for additional platforms as we wait for Hades to deliver?
That's a great question, and one I've gotten a lot on the floor this week. So we're familiar with our legacy platform that was a very coin-centric, point design type turboprop fleet, our guardrail fleet, which has been performing well for almost 40 years. Our EMARS aircraft of many different designs and variants, as well as the ARL aircraft, all have been performing very well with the current missions. But as we move to try to gain a more MDO capable and ready force, which will lead us to Hades as a program of record, we've sort of got a gap, right? Where we need to be able to field MDO relevant systems to meet the intelligence community's requirements collections. And so, and able to do that, we've gone out, we have 3 technical demonstrators flying right now. They've been flying for 2 of them for over a year. Ares in the Pacific right now is doing some great work in PACOM. And we have Artemis 1 and Artemis 2. I'm not sure if that's Artemi or not, but it's 2 aircraft. And those are Challenger 650s. And they're operating in the EUCOM theater and helping to respond to some of the crises in EUCOM that we've seen over the last year and a half, and are performing very well. So, and able to build on that success, we're just recently awarded in March an award for Athena R, the R standing for radar. The Athena, another great acronym that I won't try to relay on stage because I'll probably mess it up. But those 2 aircraft will have a radar in them that will enable them to be the first radar-equipped Army jet aircraft to fill those mission requirements that require a radar. Additionally, later this year, we plan on awarding a second contract or a second plan to get at least 2 more aircraft, Athena S being SIGINT focused, intensive on being able to use that collection asset for ELINT, comment, SIGINT, for those types of missions. So at that point, we should have 7 ISR capable jet aircraft operating throughout the world to meet the COCOM's requirements for intel collection while we build up our program of record, as I mentioned, starting in 24 and hopefully delivering that first system in the 26-27 time frame for operational demos and experimentation and learning. So we are learning a lot from the COCO aircraft. They're meeting the commander's requirements needs right now. They're proving that there is definitely a very strong future for jet aerial ISR collection within the U.S. Army. So that's a great question, and we're very happy with the way that things are going and the things that we're learning from those.
Thanks, Joe. Colonel Morgan, earlier we asked Colonel Lane how the role of the UH-60 would change once FLRAA and FLRAA were fielded. Can you address, from an ACM-Lift point of view, how does the role of the CH-47 change with FLRAA and FLRAA?
Thank you, sir. So I think it's a lot along the same line. So the CH-47 is the heavy lift capability in the United States Army. There's nothing out there on the horizon. So it is and will be our heavy lift for some time. It executes the mission well. It's a great airframe, and you have to believe me, coming from a Blackhawk guy. We do think that along with every other airframe, like I mentioned up front, we do have to do targeted modernization to make sure that those aircraft, whether we end up going with a Block 2 or something otherwise, that the aircraft can meet the demands of the force moving forward. I know there's a pending decision out there, and I'll just mention that here. It's probably going to be a very unsatisfying answer, but I'll tell you that the Army aviation leadership and the Army leadership writ large will make the appropriate decision at the appropriate time based on all the analysis that's available out there. So in the meantime, we will continue to do the things that I mentioned earlier. We'll do that targeted modernization. We'll look at things that address obsolescence, safety. I'll bring those things to Colonel Niles, Colonel Hickey, and the great team over there at PM Cargo, and make that aircraft continue to be the premier world-class heavy lift aircraft out there. Thanks, sir.
Thanks. Colonel Phillips, for you, if you don't mind, we've heard an ACM-Lift perspective. We've heard a PM utility perspective on what the role of their respective aircraft will be for FLRAA. Obviously, you've heard their answers. You're probably well-versed on them. Is there anything you'd like to add from a FLRAA perspective?
Yeah, thanks for that, sir. I think if you look at the long-range assault aircraft and just spell it out, right, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at twice as far and twice as fast as the current fleet can execute the mission to move a battalion in a period of darkness, move a brigade in a period of darkness, and then actually do that in an MDO environment. So when you look at that future environment and you look at long-range precision fires and how challenging the environment's going to be for things like FARPs and the way we've done business for the past 30 years, I think we have to maintain that strategic, operational, and tactical really dominance on the battlefield. And that's where we see some of the range, the speed, and the payload coming into such great usage in the future force. And really that Army of 2030 is going to have a mixed fleet of all of our aircraft. And so we've got to be interoperable with the aircraft that are in the fleet today, in the cabs, the H-60 Mikes, the Victors, the medevac aircraft. We have to be interoperable with the heavy lift aircraft, and that's from a communications and a survivability perspective. We have to be interoperable at the cab level with those aircraft because we're going to be fighting together in the future. And sir, I'll just close with one last thing. The modular open system approach that's common across our platform, FLRAA, you heard Cal talk about it. That's the path ahead that's going to keep us interoperable at the cab level. We're going to be able to bring on new communications capabilities, new survivability capabilities, new sensors onto the aircraft, and we're going to be doing that at a pace that will stay ahead of the threats, not just keep up with the threats, but stay ahead of the threats, and then really provide the warfighters what they need before they deploy to the fight, so when they are in the fight, they can actually execute their mission together and make it back in one piece.
Excellent. Thank you. Colonel Lane, we're back to you again. I mean, I think Colonel Phillips just led us into a good point about MOSA, the modular open system architecture. And you touched on it a little bit as you talked about the UH-60 Victor fleet. I was wondering if you can go into just a little more detail with us on how MOSA is being implemented in the Blackhawk Enduring fleet.
Thanks, sir. So we're definitely implementing the architecture and the concept of MOSA into the UH-60 fleet. And it was almost a something that we didn't have to think about, and it definitely made sense that we had to move in that direction. And I mentioned before the size of the fleet and our ability to maintain that fleet. We had to consider things of cost. And that's the number one driver for a fleet our size and capability, primarily for our warfighters. So with that being said, we had to look for opportunities of rapid technology insertion, cost avoidance, cost savings, and speed of integration. Those are key into everything that we want to do on the battlefield as we complement the FLRAA fleet as we move into it. So those are the key tenets that we're focused on. So I think from an obsolescence and safety standpoint, that was another driver to make sure that we had the capability, or we're thinking far enough ahead of an obsolescence event, and how we could use MOSA to bring about supporting the fleet and making sure we had everything that we need for our aviators and maintainers. So thanks, sir.
Sure. Colonel Hickey, kind of staying and remaining consistent with this theme of modernization of the enduring fleet, can you tell us how PM Cargo, what's your present day thinking about keeping CH-47 Block 1 relevant in the coming years?
Sir, thank you for that question. I think all these gentlemen have said it quite well, and the theme here is MOSA, right? That's how we'll keep that aircraft relevant for the coming years. MOSA to sustain the system, basically, right? Also, some of the things that we're doing inside of PM Cargo internally is looking at how we do maintenance, how we train, as well as things that we do to ensure cost savings for ourselves as well as our FMS customers.
Great, thank you. Joe, one last question for you. What is the Army's interest in high-altitude platforms, and what role will PEO Aviation, specifically PM Fixed Wing, play?
Thanks, that's a good question. Like I alluded to earlier, it's funny to be PM Balloon, right? I used to make fun of PM Combat Boot a decade ago until I met the guy, and he was about 6'4", with a Ranger tab, and told me it wasn't funny. So part of the punishment for that, I guess, is becoming PM Balloon. But high-altitude platforms, I think the Army just signed their Abbreviated Capabilities Development Document, ACDD. And after that, we were designated within PEO Aviation as the Office of Primary Responsibility, and then subdelegated to us here in PM Fixed Wing on the platform side. And although we're the OPR, we work very closely, just like we do with Hades and the SEMA fleet, with our partners at IEWS, PM Aerial Sensors, Dennis Teefee, my counterpart there, to enable providing a system to the Army. So with respect to high-altitude balloons and high-altitude solar gliders right now, we're really in an experimentation phase within the Army and really across OSD. You see a lot of disparate efforts right now to do demonstrations. We just participated recently 2 weeks ago out in Vanguard 23 with three altitude balloons, high-altitude balloons, and did very well on the range there in that exercise. Last year we had some great success with high-altitude solar aircraft getting into the stratosphere. This year we plan on having two other aircraft demonstrations with high-altitude stratospheric gliders, or aircraft, solar aircraft, and then continuing with the balloon experimentation. And we actually have 3 balloon platoons within the Army as well. They exist within the multi-domain task forces. So we're working with the soldiers to be able to work with us during those exercises to launch the balloons, to recover the balloons, to experiment with them. And I'd say we'll start to see, now that we have an ACDD and an OPR, we can start to palm for that and look for money and compete really in Palm 26, when hopefully we'll get some dedicated funds into our office to really get after that. But I'd say an experimentation phase, as we look through the MDSS, the multi-domain sensing system, of which Hades is a part. We want to try to be as robust as we can in those sensing areas, and whether it's for communication networks, communication nodes, deep sensing, there's a lot of different utility for having a platform that's up above 60,000 feet. The radio horizon, for one thing, if you want to see a long way, it turns out the Earth is round, and so you have to get quite a ways up off the ground to do that. So there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of learning that we're going to be doing over the future coming years, and it's a pretty exciting time to be PM balloon and PM stratospheric airplane. So keep reading your magazines and the news blogs, because I think there's some interesting stuff coming up for that.
Thanks. I think we have time for a few questions from the audience. Anyone have a question for our panelists? All right. If not, keeping with the theme established on the previous panel by our incoming president, we're going to train to standard, not to time today. I'd like you all to give a hand, please, to our panelists. And following up with the previous moderators, I'd like to thank all of them for the job they've done so far, for the work that they're doing right now, and for what we can expect of them in the future. Hua.
Thanks, sir.